Well, this year, the United States experienced its worst drought in nearly half a century, which destroyed 1/6 of the country's expected corn crop. This threatened a surge in global food price inflation and highlighted the susceptibility of the farming industry. Developer of drought and pest-resistant seeds, Syngenta, seeks to invest $500 million in Africa to open a seed technology market. And joining us for more insight into this is John Atkin, COO of Syngenta. Thanks so much, John, for joining us today. Before we take a look at your investment, let's just quickly take a step back here. I mean, we've got Africa, a net importer of food, and that's why we're impacted by global weather conditions and things that happen, for example, in the US. Why is establishing food security in Africa or on the continent such a challenge, despite the fact that we've got vast agri potential?
Oh, I think this goes back a long way. The conditions that we really need for investment in agriculture, stable government helps a lot, a good regulatory process in each of these countries, good training, a source of labor and know-how that can help farmers produce more. I mean, farming's a lonely business. When you're a farmer, you work alone. Every farmer is a bit of an entrepreneur, and they need help. And I think it's about getting the technology to these farmers and about having the know-how to give them that help they need, and we're not quite there yet.
So take us through this investment that you're making and how you see it actually alleviating some of the problems we face and the constraints we face in upping our own agricultural production.
Well, we're very excited about this. I mean, we're a company with sales over 13 billion worldwide. We have a good business in Africa, a particularly good business in South Africa, but we see a real potential here. We think we can create a business of around $1 billion in 10 years. And to do that, we're looking at an investment of some 500 million, 700 people to be hired, and with the goal of increasing yields by around 50%. So there's a strong focus here on people. We do know that it's all about know-how. It's about supporting these farmers. And so the first steps as we go along this road will be to develop the know-how and the people, first of all, inside our own company. We need to build on the strengths we already have, and then to deploy that in the field.
Mm-hmm. John, it's Lindsay in Cape Town.
Sure.
I like what you're talking about. I like the fact that you recognise the potential of Africa being an agricultural powerhouse globally. What I don't quite understand is the sort of one-dimensional approach, i.e. you take your product and you say, well, you can take this piece of land and you get more yield out of it. I think it's got to be more broad-based, hasn't it? You've got to work with governments and you've got to come up with some kind of more sustainable agricultural future. The seeds are one thing, but the land is another, and the education of the potential farmers of the future is another thing. I mean, are you working with, as a private company, working with governments in order to get a more holistic approach?
You raise an absolutely fundamental point. I'm here in Johannesburg today because we are running what we call our demonstration days, and we have 600 people here, and we're showcasing our technology in a very particular way. We think we're unique in the way we're putting together these technologies. And as you indicate, this is not just about the technologies. These demonstration days, we've got customers, we've got stakeholders, we've got people who are connected to the holistic nature of agriculture. This is not just about getting technology to a farmer. This is about training. This is about linking technologies. How do you work with the suppliers of fertilizer? We're not directly in plant nutrition, but we work with fertilizer companies. Mm-hmm. How do you work with companies that are involved in irrigation technology and to optimize the use of water, get more crop per drop? How do you do that? We can't do that on our own, but
especially where we know productivity is a big bone of contention.
Exactly. Exactly. And we've got, you hinted at it earlier on in the interview, we've got some really exciting seed varieties which grow better in drought conditions, and we've also got some associated chemical technologies which help root growth and help the strength of the plant. Put these things together with the right sort of irrigation program, and you suddenly have something which is hugely more productive and makes better use of inputs than the standard system. So it is about combination of technologies. It is about openness. We're really making an effort to work much more with governments, with other stakeholders, with NGOs. We want to dialogue with people. We invite people. We've got all these people at our demo days today. It's exciting stuff.
John, just going back to what a previous interview we just had, and the nuclear industry in terms of power generation has got some bad press, and I think the seed industry worldwide, if you have a look at some of these American documentaries that have been released recently, for example, one was called Food Inc., there's been a couple of others as well, and your companies like yours have come under fire because of the potential manipulation of the natural order of things. In other words, you might some of these seeds might be I don't know if the right term is genetically modified, but enhanced, and in the long term that may not be good for the whole chain of events. Do you see what I'm saying in a rather clumsy way?
I see exactly what you're saying, and well, first of all, let me be clear that these technologies are a force for the good. Of that we feel there's no doubt. Of course, many people who are involved in the technology, not just us, see that. I think we live in a world where there's a bit of technophobia. People live in cities, they don't live as close to farms as they used to. People don't understand what it takes to produce food to feed 7 billion, going on 9. It's much different to anything we saw 50 years ago. There's a romantic notion still out there. So the idea of technology in agriculture is something that people seem sometimes not to be comfortable with, despite the fact that it's welcomed in medicines, and it's welcomed in cars, and it's welcomed in our homes in the form of the latest device to entertain us. We have a real challenge to communicate better these technologies, but they, of course, I'm totally convinced after 35 years in this business through all its phases to talk about this, but we are trying very hard to illustrate to people that it really can help, not just with productivity that we desperately need, but also with sustainability, getting more out of the resources that we have.